Let's move on now and take a look at what's been grabbing the headlines here in France. And for that, I'm joined by Solange Mougin from our press review team. And Solange, you've been taking a look at how the French papers have been reacting to yesterday's nationwide strike involving civil servants and railway employees.
Yeah, let's start by taking a look at how the regional papers sort of covered the issue. Let's start with the La Voix du Nord, which is from Lille in northern France. They said the protests were a tour de chauffe, or a warm-up lap for future protests. The headline is also a play on words, because to chauffe is to heat up, as in the streets were heating up yesterday. Now, Sud-Ouest went with a similar headline. The Southwestern paper says the streets have given its first warning. Le Télégramme, which is a regional paper from the northwest of France, tries to get to the bottom of whether state employees really have it all that good, as popular belief often assumes. They ask and try to answer whether les fonctionnaires really work less and whether there are too many of them.
And are French papers generally saying that this strike was a success?
Yeah, well, it depends. It's a mixed bag. But according to Aujourd'hui en France, Le Parisien, ça ne prend pas, or it isn't working, it isn't gaining momentum. They point to the fact that only 47,000 rail protesters made it to the Paris strike. Now, Le Figaro, which is the right-leaning paper, went with a similar line, saying the divisions between rail unions and trade unions in general created a smaller than hoped-for crowd. Now, those divisions are thus, according to Le Figaro, helping the government. But if you go on the other end of the media and the political spectrum to, for example, L'Humanité or L'Huma, the communist paper goes with the number of protesters provided by the CGT union. They say 400, on the top there, they say 400,000 people came out for what they call a people's referendum. Now, what I find interesting about this Huma cover is, and I find it quite powerful, in the center you have a quote from Emmanuel Macron from the 15th of March that says, "I do not see anger in the country." Time, of course, will tell if the president changes his tune, as there are more protests slated for next month, early next month.
Well, staying with France, the French papers are also combing through Nicolas Sarkozy's response to being formally charged in an investigation that he received campaign funds from the former Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi.
Well, last night, Nicolas Sarkozy went on national television, and he also gave an exclusive interview to Le Figaro, where he laid out the principal arguments of his defense. Now, today, Libération goes through those arguments one by one and analyzes them. And the left-leaning paper weighs in on whether they think Sarkozy whether what he's saying is true or false. Now, Le Monde does the same exact thing in one of its many articles on the subject, and they say there are blind spots in Nicolas Sarkozy's defense.
We're switching gears now, and you found an in-depth article in the left-wing paper Libération, which looks at sexual harassment here in France.
Yeah, Libération dedicates most of its front page to an in-depth article that they did on Saint-Cyr, which is the nation's military academy. And they basically interviewed 15 or more students. These students came forward and described the harassment and sexism that's an integral part of life there, from hazing to intimidation to humiliating girl cadets simply because they're girls. Now, Libé explains that much of this behavior comes from a minority, a clan at the school that call themselves the tradis, or the traditionals. Now, that these boys publicly chant quotes such as "women should be scalped," and they also have a code word for misogyny represented by the symbol U. You don't see it there, which, according to students, is tagged throughout the school.
Now, the yearly campaign to raise awareness about AIDS kicks off nationwide here in France and runs through the weekend. You found an article in Le Parisien about how young people might be dropping their guard about this illness.
Yeah, the Aujourd'hui en France tells the story of one young girl who contacted HIV when she was just 20 years old. And Le Parisien chose to profile her in part because a study has just come out saying that the number of young people between 15 and 24 that become infected with HIV has jumped by 24%. Polls also show that some 20% of young people say they feel they do not know enough about the disease.
And finally, Solange, you have some news, bizarrely from Siberia, about one of France's favourite athletes.
Yeah, it's Martin, yes, Siberia. It was just where the event was held. But Matin Fourcade, who is one of France's favourite athletes, won his 7th World Cup in biathlon yesterday. It is the 7th time in a row that he's won the cup, which is the first time in the sport. So L'Équipe went with the catchy wordplay here, spelling out the number set, or 7, to celebrate the win. Now, the headline reads "c'est énorme," which also means it is enormous. So if you don't speak French, the number 7 and the word c'est are said in a similar way. Kind of similar, yeah. So that's L'Équipe having fun with the Matin Fourcade win.
Solange Mougin with the press review. Thank you very much. I'm back after the break with another roundup of world news here on France 24. In the next 30 minutes, we'll also be bringing you our Focus report, which zooms in on the issue that split Westminster and the UK into Brexiteers and Remainers. With just over a year to go before the kingdom cuts its ties with Brussels and sets sail alone, our team has been crisscrossing the country to find out what kind of deal voters actually want. Do stay with us. Live from Paris continues.